everyone. Thank you very much for taking the time out of a very busy conference. I don't think I've had as many back-to-back 30-minute meetings ever as the last 2 days. My name is Xander Raphael. I'm the CEO of Climb Credit. Climb Credit is a student lending business focused on skills-based training. We started it with the backdrop of the student loan crisis around all of us. The front page of every newspaper for the last several years has been this crisis. But when you really dig into it and look at that crisis, it's less a crisis of debt and more a crisis of education. It's not as though the loans that students are taking have usurious interest rates. It's more that the education they're buying with those loans is not delivering the outcomes they hoped for. Either they aren't graduating and they're going back to their previous job with the same debt, or they're graduating but not getting the income bump they'd hoped to get. So we launched Climb to expand access to quality education. And we define quality education as education that had a high ROI, education that actually led to employment. So there were a few founding principles underlying Climb as a lender. The first was that every program we worked with, we'd evaluate individual student outcomes to ensure that with a certain certainty, students could expect increased income relative to the price they'd paid for that education, effectively treating education like an investment, where the cost was tuition and the return on that investment was increased salary. The second is we then use that data, if it even passed, to underwrite the students based on their future income rather than their current income, so that a student who was applying with no income that day because they'd quit their job to go to school wouldn't be judged based on having zero income, but instead on the projected income they would have moving forward. And finally, every school we work with is asked to put skin in the game alongside us and our investors. So for the first time, schools' incentives are aligned with students' incentives, or aligned with lenders' incentives. The schools do better when students graduate and find employment, and they do worse when students don't. Now, what do I mean by outcomes? This is sort of wonkish, but I think every career accelerator program should be judged on a chart like this. This is actually how we evaluate our schools. Each data point is an individual graduate. The x-axis is their previous income. The y-axis is their new income. So does this point? Let's see. Does this blind anyone? It doesn't. Each data point you can see, you pick someone, go down to the bottom, find someone on that $40,000 line, move up. And you can see that you have people who previously were earning $40,000, now earning $80,000 from this program. Anyone in that purple shaded half is earning more than they were previously. And you can aggregate these stats out and start to see which programs are good and which really deliver value to students in terms of higher income and which do not. And then we'll step in and fund those that do, expanding access to those and shrinking access to the others. Now, we're doing this across a whole variety of programs. We actually started as some of you may know, in coding boot camps. This was where we started. They provided remarkable return. But we've since expanded, and they now make up a minority of the loans we're making. We're doing everything from on the high-end data science IT programs, master's in education programs delivered online at a fraction of the cost of more general programs, all the way down the spectrum to truck driving programs, which, to give you a sense of the ROI, cost about $5,000, take about 5 to 6 weeks, and lift people from minimum wage or unemployment to an average starting salary from the good programs of $48,000. You all work in education, and can anyone guess the average starting salary of a college graduate today in America? It's about $50,000. 4 years, close to $100,000. 5 weeks, $5,000, the same starting salary. Now, clearly there are benefits to a broader college education, but I share that example to show that there are remarkable skills-based programs out there that struggle to find financing, and we step in to help them. And the results speak for themselves. On average, our borrowers have received a 67% salary bump in the year after taking our loan. 3/5 of those unemployed have found employment, unemployed before they entered the program, as in they'd been searching for work for a long time. 39% median pay increase into their second job after that first bump. And there's the classic coding boot camp example here of the bartender earning 30 grand to the software engineer earning 95. But many people in this room in this conference have heard of these examples. I'm actually much more excited about the unemployed coal workers who are now working as drivers, the junior teachers who've been promoted to a senior teaching role at their same school once they have a master's of education. Those results are equally impressive from an ROI standpoint, but less heralded in circles like these. And so this is something my team gets very excited about. At the end of 2017, we did an analysis on how much new salary had been created from our loans. Because each time we make a loan, we can assess that salary change. And over $50 million of net new salary had been created for our borrowers at that point. We've since lent significantly more. We've had a very good end of 2018, but that was about a dollar for dollar. For every dollar we lent out, another dollar was created in net new salary. So the ROI was staggering to those students. And for the schools, many people would ask, well, why do they take risk on these loans? They don't want to do that. They'd rather not take risk. Of course they wouldn't. But because of this structure, we're able to help students that no one else can help. 73% of our students report they couldn't have attended the program we're funding them for had we not been there. So these are marginal enrollments for the school. Schools report that their enrollment grows once we work with them, which makes them willing to partake in this risk share model with us. I'm going to skip this in the interest of time, but this slide just simply says we're able to fund up and down the credit spectrum through this model, which allows us to fund more students. We've built a ton of software to help schools and students get through. Our application, as you would expect, is completely automated, mobile optimized. It takes about 4 minutes for a student to fill out some very basic information. They get an instant decision right away about the loan. They can then choose to sign it electronically. And for schools, and this is very important, we've built a huge amount of software that in real time gives them updates on where all of their students in the application flow are so that they can manage the 20-odd, 30-odd% of students that we're funding within their program. Because if you think about it, that is a large chunk of their enrollment, and they need to know where all those students are. So that's Climb. We've been growing at about doubling every year on all metrics. Performance on all these loans is well within expectations, despite lending to students that traditional lenders couldn't touch. Happy to talk to any of you about schools you're working with, financing sources, people interested in alternative credit. I'll be here after the presentation. Thank you.